Jesus be a fence, but don't make me jump the fence. Because people going to try you.
It's the Self Care for Success show. Meet your certified life and book coach, Joanne Dean.
Greetings and blessings to you, and welcome to the show. We are back with part two of our interview with Kim Martin-Raymond. Enjoy.
A little bit about how your life changed. Earlier on, you said, the second thing was you became a minister. Talk a little bit about how growing up, knowing God as we do because of who our grandmother served and our great
Yes,
grandmother served, but when we come to know God and accept Him for ourselves,
yes,
a little bit about how that journey has changed.
yeah, yeah. And that has been, my parents, and they've been together since my mom was 14 and my dad was 17. And so they've been married, they've been together over 60 years. They've been married this year, July will make 56 years that they've been married. And they are just the light source of my life, but they spent a lot of time in church growing up. So when my sister and I and my brothers were born, they did not push us to go to church. So I actually did not start going to church until I was 9. My grandmother lived around the corner from us, and that was my nana. Her birthday is the day before mine, so we stuck at the hip. So wherever my grandmother did, I always wanted to do what my nana was doing. And so she would go to church on Sundays. And one Sunday I just said, Nana, I want to go to church with you. And she was like, come on, baby. And I went with her. And that kind of started my siblings going to church. And then my cousins and my uncles and aunts, we started going. And next thing you know, we formed a choir. And my grandmother went to a very small Baptist church. And that started my journey with church. And you know, I went because she took us and we just learned to go. And it wasn't really a why, it was just go because you're told to go. Go because it's the right thing to do. So for many years, I just went to church for that reason. Then I had a falling out at church because I was engaged to my oldest daughter's father. And then I got pregnant. And I went before the church and told them, we're having, I found out I'm expecting, I'm having a child, and, I want my child to be raised in the church. And unfortunately, at that time, my pastor chastised us. You shouldn't be having sex out of marriage. And he just went on and he stood in front of the church and said those things. And I was very offended because I said, I thought this was a place to come to ask for forgiveness and to heal. And that was not my experience. And so we left that church. And I remember several of us walked out of the church that day and never returned. And that was the first experience I had with, I guess, quote unquote, church hurt. I was just like, I thought that this is where you come to heal. And so that was a difficult thing for me. And it was many years before I went back to church because I said, that wasn't what I thought church was supposed to be. And so it was a challenge at that time. And then I went to churches after that. Somewhere they gave me a certificate for speaking in tongues. They would stand over you and make you say certain words. And it was a that happened. I got a certificate. I have a certificate for talking in tongues. Yes, yes, ma'am. And so, I mean, there are so many experiences that I know that there are people who have had out there with regards to church. I remember going to a church, I was singing in a choir, and they had a service, had a program for the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts afterwards, and a fight broke out in the church. They had to come to my house to pick up the robe because I was like, I'm not going back there. So I had some experiences in church, and I was just like, okay, maybe I'm not understanding what church is supposed to be. And it wasn't until I remarried and my second husband was, very much into the word and just learning the word. And that's where my journey began, with understanding scripture. and trying to understand the meaning and how do I apply it to my life. And it wasn't until I moved here to Atlanta in 1996, and Charles Stanley, may he rest in peace. I used to watch him on television back in New York. And when I moved to Atlanta, I was like, I'm going to his church because I liked that he was an expository preacher. And that's different from an exclamatory preacher, ones that tell you stories, and you can have that car, you can have that house, you can have that, all of those name it and claim it kind of people. And then you have people who, talk about the word and kind of give you the background and the history behind the word. And me, as a person who has always loved education, who has taught, who has that background, and that kind of spoke to me because I wanted to understand, how do I apply this to my life? What was happening during this time? What was the message behind what it was that is being spoken in this word? And then, it became that journey for me of just understanding the word. I don't know it all. We all know the cliches, the things that we heard, but it was like, what did the scripture say before that and after that? So that way I can make sure that we're applying it in the right way, because it's amazing how we can take the word and make it be anything that we want it to be. Honor your husband, those kinds of things. People are like, okay, so what were they saying there? There's a lot that goes into understanding the word and getting the history behind it. And then also, again, how do I apply this to my life today? And so there began that journey. And that's where, I was challenged to understand, what do you understand about the word? What do you know about the word? And that's where those questions came to me, why do you believe what you believe? And I was just like, whoa, that's a good question. Or why do you go to this church? I'm like, because Nana said so. She told me to go, so I'm just going. And it was a matter of, okay, understanding what the word means to me. And for me, it's, as I go through life, as I go through circumstances, it has become a part of my toolbox. And that's something that I always say. I have toolboxes, just like we have, spare tire and tire rods and things in our cars that help us when we're when something happens to our cars. What do I have spiritually that connects me when I'm going through a season or a challenge in my life? What promises has he made? And am I remembering those? Can I bring those to my remembrance? Or can I quote a scripture, when I'm having a situation or a season that's happening in my life? Can I draw from the word? What does the word say about this? What does the word say about that? And I had to really, start to delve into what my relation was with God. And that's what became critical for me in my ministry. How am I growing in my relationship with God? Do I use him as a vending machine and just go and, stick a coin in there, or a slot machine when I feel like I need to be lucky? I'm just going to call on him when something is happening. Or am I walking with him daily? Do I have a relationship with him where I can talk to him, and where it's just, it's nothing for me to say a prayer at any time during the course of the day if I'm going through, and if I'm going through a time that's hard. What does the word say? What are his promises to me? He said he will never leave me nor forsake me. Okay. The simplest of things. And so those are things, just like we hunger for food, and we have those little hunger pangs where we go and eat. But do we ever have spiritual hunger pangs where we just say, I just want to, my desire is to know God. My desire is to establish and continue to develop that relationship with him. What am I doing through that? And for me, it's going to the word, reading the word daily, learning about others' experiences in the world, but also understanding that the word is something that man created too. They created this Bible and they put things in it that they wanted to put in there. And how do we navigate around that? And for me, it's just really become, what is my relationship with him? What is it? What are his promises made to me? And that's just how, that's how it's changed my outlook on life. That's been my journey, and I'm still on it. I'm not perfect. I always say something funny. I always say, I don't know if this is a good thing to say, but I say, people are going to try you. And that's just the truth. People are going to try you. Lord, don't make me jump this fence because I'm not perfect. I am a spiritual being living a human experience. But because I'm living that human experience, with that human experience comes emotions, comes, so sometimes I may act out of order, but it's my responsibility that, okay, before you go there, okay, stop. Think about what it is that you're doing. Think about what it is that you're saying, and understand the impact of those things that you're doing and you're saying. What do they have? What do they mean? So
Absolutely. I love that. And I love that, we chuckle about the experiences, but I believe that all experiences come to teach us.
absolutely.
And through all those things, there was the spirit in you that knew that this doesn't feel like God.
Right.
And you kept on the path until you connected to where you believed you were supposed to be and
Right.
what serving God felt like for you,
Yes.
that felt aligned with the spiritual part of you. And
Yeah.
so I love that you now have the relationship with him, because God is a God that's loving. We find ourselves in spaces that doesn't feel like this reflects the God that I.
Right. Oh yes. Oh
And so
yes.
I'm so happy that you now have a relationship that you feel God's love.
Yes. Yes. It is a blessing. That when we get to that space where we choose him, there's a book that's called The End of Me, and it's just talking about how we do. In order for us to experience God, we have to come to the end of ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and we have to be able to release some of those things that bind us and that keep us from that right relationship with him. And it's coming to the end of yourself, and choosing to live for God, to live for him, and to be the vessel that he's called you to be. I leave myself open for him to pour into me, so that I can pour into others from a place of overflow, not from a place where I'm pouring into everybody everything that I have and I'm leaving nothing for myself. I want to be able to be at this point of overflow where I'm giving, so that both of us can celebrate in what it is that we have, because we're able to pour into each other. And it's not that I have any animosity towards you, because I've felt like I've given you everything that I have and I've left nothing for me, you know? But it's being able to love your brother and sister as you love yourself. That's what the word calls for us to do. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. And so how are we doing that? And a lot of us are not loving on ourselves first.
That's it right there, Kim, because we lack love for ourselves, because we don't see ourselves as we truly are.
Right.
Then that's where the foundation is shaky.
That's right.
I
That's right.
always say the foundation begins with us. How
Yes.
solid is your foundation? What are you building that on? Are you
Right.
building it upon things that other people have said about you? Or have you taken out the time to get to know who you are and
That's
the
right.
value that you bring to this world?
That's right. That's right. I mean, that is something that is critical and key. We have lost ourselves. We've lost ourselves, and a lot of us don't know how to sit with ourselves. And I think the pandemic was a huge factor in causing people to stop and really having to sit with themselves. Because we can always find things to distract us and to deter us from doing anything. Oh, I'm too busy. I didn't have time to do this. And now, okay, the world stopped for a minute. Okay, and so now what? Now you can't. Now what? And I think a lot of people took a hard look at themselves and said, okay, I think I need to do some things differently. Or some people just simply didn't like what they saw. And they had to say, okay, so I need to do something different. I need to really start taking time to invest in myself. I started a wellness journey because I just got tired. I was not feeling well. I didn't have a sense of wellness, if that makes sense. I did not have a sense of wellness. I did not feel well. I was tired. I was lethargic all the time. I didn't have any energy, but I just did not feel well. Not necessarily something particular hurt in particular. I just did not feel well. I did not feel a sense of joy, of happiness. Yeah, I chuckled a little bit. Oh, that was funny, that was cute. But I just did not have this joy. Or I didn't have that peace that surpasses all understanding. What is that? I didn't even know what that was. And when you start to experience it, it was like, oh, when you say, how are you feeling? We're all so equipped to just say, I'm okay, and everything in your body language, your facial expression, everything says, no, you're not okay. But we learn to say it because it's the polite thing to say, you know? And then every once in a while, somebody goes, well, I'm not feeling so good. Then all of a sudden you go, oh, okay, great. Then you go, wait a minute, what'd you say? Because we're so used to that person saying that they're okay that we anticipate that. And then we just go on and didn't even hear that cry for help that somebody may have put out there. So yeah, it's such a journey to understand who you are and to be able to say, okay, these are some things that are happening to me, and I can't deal with them on my own. How do we cope? And an acronym for cope for me is to create our peaceful existence. How are we creating our peaceful existence? What are we doing to cope? And we mask so much of what it is that we are experiencing that we never get to the root of it. And then it goes back to that same thing with food. Okay, so I'm stressed, so I'm going to eat this whole carton of ice cream. Is that really going to help you? It doesn't treat the problem. It gives you those little dopamines that make you feel good for a little while, but it never addresses the problem. And how often do we go through life doing that? We self-medicate, we mask things, or we use the medication. Yeah, it stops the pain for those couple of hours, but then when that pain comes back, how are we addressing that pain long term? Mm-hmm. So those are the kinds of things that we have to ask ourselves. What tools do we have to equip ourselves so that we are addressing the need and not just masking it?
Absolutely. And so I heard you say that I have a toolbox, and you talked about, three pivotal moments in your life: the loss of your daughter, you became a minister, and then you lost the weight, and now you're walking in this new body. Talk about any fear you experienced along the way and how you overcame that fear.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest fear, and we talked about this a little, touched on this briefly before we started, is that whole issue of imposter syndrome. And for me, even growing up, I've always excelled, always did well in school. When I graduated from my undergraduate program, I graduated with a 4.0. I've always done well in school and being able to, I guess, regurgitate the information that was given to me. And, we put a lot into that, accolades and things like that. And I think for me, it was never a fear of failure. It was a fear of success. If I do this well and people catch on to it and people like what it is that I do, there's going to be a demand on me to do more. Say, for instance, I was a person who made delicious cookies, and I'm going to go put those cookies out there. But what happens if the demand is larger than what I can provide? Now what? And that's just to put it in layman's terms, just for, people to kind of connect with what I'm talking about. There are certain things that I'm able to do and just wouldn't do them for fear of doing them well and now not being able to meet the demand. And so I stood down a lot and just like, I've written books, I've done coaching, I have done my podcast, but I have not always put it out there the way that I should, because I was like, okay, what happens if a lot of people like it and then I can't meet that demand? A podcast we do weekly. I do it weekly. I've been doing it for 3 years. That's enough content. that I could say, okay, yeah, I've been able to do it. But then my thought is like, okay, well, what happens if it doesn't happen? Okay, what happens if it doesn't? How do you know? You don't know until you get there. And so I think a lot of that fear of failure kept me from taking leaps of faith. I back in 2015, I resigned from my position and walked away. Didn't have a job lined up or anything because I was like, I'm going to start. I had started a business the year before, and I took a leap of faith, and that was something that I would have never done because you work your job and you work your job till you retire, period, because that's what people in my generation did. You worked and you were loyal to your company. And my thought in looking at some of these millennials and seeing people leaving jobs after 2 or 3 years, I'm like, what do you mean you're leaving? I've been here 15 years, I've been here 10 years. We're so used to staying put that we didn't know what it meant to take a leap of faith. And so for me, I started learning that, okay, yes, you're capable of doing this. You've done it. And why are you worried about what can possibly happen? I really had to start looking at the now. What's happening right now? And I really had to start being childlike in my thinking. Why? First of all, why are you doing this? Why are you feeling the way that you're feeling about this? What does that mean? Where's that coming from? Okay, and so just like with anything else in my life, if something happens, you handle it. Okay, so has there been something that you sought to, that a situation that's come up that you haven't handled yet? And I had to ask myself that question. And I was just like, no, because I'm one of those people when something happens, okay, so let's look at what needs to be done and the steps I need to do. Do I need some help? Do I need somebody to come in? And typically, if there was that situation, I knew who to call, or I knew who to ask, or I knew how to research enough to find out what help I needed. So it was just like, there's not a matter of if you can do it. It's just like, you can do it, but why? Why aren't you doing it? And so that became my question, and then you started hearing people talking about, know your why. Why are you doing the things that you're doing? And that's kind of what changed things for me. I was like, I need to start with the why. And that's helped me break a lot of the fear, just understanding where it's coming from. And is it justifiable? Am I justified in my thoughts of this? And if I am, what do I need to help me to get past it? Because it's not anything that can't be resolved, because you've resolved things. I've resolved things in the past. So it was just a matter of me getting in my own way. And so I think that's what's been helping me to break through a lot of these barriers. Just saying, okay, Kim, why? And if it's something that you need help with, go and ask for the help. But in the meantime, go ahead and do it, because you haven't reached that yet. Has it happened yet? No. Okay, so then what are you worried about it for? Keep going. And that's what I've had to do. So it's just, I have a lot of conversations with myself. There's a lot that goes on in this, like my dad says, under the cap. There's a whole lot going on up under here. Trying to figure out. I have a lot of conversations with myself, and that's where it starts, because everything starts with you first acknowledging that something is wrong. You can never get to a point of healing until you acknowledge that something is wrong. When you're not acknowledging it, you're denying that it's happening. But if it's something that's happening and you acknowledge it, that's the first step to healing. And that's what I had to learn.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
It is. It is not easy at all. And it takes practice. You're practicing that mental muscle. Just like you work your physical muscles, you have to work those mental muscles too. And sometimes we don't do that. We wait for somebody to give us the answer. We wait for somebody to hand it to us. We wait for somebody to come and knock on the door. Opportunity is not knocking on the door. They're not coming around. They're not Amazon Prime. They're not coming around knocking on doors. They're not doing that. We have to be able to get to that place of acknowledging that something is wrong and acknowledging that we need help. Otherwise, we don't get anywhere, because we're in a state of denial.
Yeah, it's definitely about taking responsibility for ourselves and where we are and where we want to be. And there are so many resources all around us. But like you said, the conversation first begins it begins with us.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So with all that you shared today, which was such a rich body of
Mhm.
work that you've already done, because you talked about, even before we got on, how you offer training and
Yeah.
so many other things that you provide for communities with all your travel. Talk a little bit about, how do you want to be known?
I want to be known as that person who talks about how we live in the now, talking about how we are experiencing our life right now. And that's so important that we come to that space of being present. And I want to be known as that person who helps to provide the tools that we need in any situation. I'm working on a project and a training that's called Trimming the Fat. And that's going to be trimming the fat mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. Just like I was saying earlier, when we have hunger pangs, we eat. What do we do when we need to spiritually feed ourselves? Are we going to the Word daily? What are we doing to trim the fat, the excess that we have in those areas? What's going into our ear gates and our eye gates that's affecting how we think, whether it be on a spiritual level or an emotional level or on a mental level? When we're hungry or thirsty to learn something, what are we doing? Do we feed that? Do we go online? This is an age of technology and information. There's information at our fingertips worldwide. Do we feed that? Are we going and trying to expand and expound on things that are going on around us? So that way we're broadening our base as an individual. What are we doing to learn? They say you learn from your womb to your tomb. You hear people say, "Oh, I was 8 years old when I learned that." Isn't it exciting when you learn something that you didn't know yesterday? It's just like, wow, I didn't even know that. But there's an excitement that comes with that. And sometimes we forget about that, and what that feels like to learn something new or to be able to do something that you didn't do before. There's an excitement that comes with that. Why do we not feed into that need? I want to be that person that helps people to equip themselves, have those toolboxes ready so that when life happens, and it will, they're ready.
Awesome. How can our listeners connect with you to get access to all that you have to offer?
Yay! Yeah, well, absolutely. They can go to my website, www.redefinding, redefindingyou.com. So it's www.redefindingyou.com. Then when they go on there, they can click on How Now podcast, and that will take them to my How Now podcast. And that's something that I do every Wednesday at 8 p.m. That's when the show launches, but it has all of the shows there. It takes you to a listing of the shows. They can click on it. It'll take you to my How Now YouTube channel, and that has items on there that talk about my wellness journey, and also will show you shows that I have done in the past and things that are going on right now. So they can go to my website and get in contact with me. I'm on social media as well. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, on Instagram, and all of those areas they can connect to by going to my website. So they'll be able to reach me.
Awesome. Kim, thank you so much for sharing a part of your journey with us today. I know that something you said will definitely touch somebody's life today. And I am just so grateful that I could have this conversation with you.
Yes, I appreciate it so much. Thank you so much for having me. And I love you, my sister. And it's always wonderful to connect.
Awesome. I love you back. Until next time, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'm your self-care sister, and you take care. You all.